Welcome to Follow South Jersey's Follow Salem podcast about the people, places, and all things good in Salem, New Jersey. This week, we talk with Cheryl Earhart, owner of Market Street Treasures here in Salem. Cheryl talks about the history of the Earhart family in Salem, as well as the unique features of her business's building right on Market Street. We also talk about the antique market today and about the more interesting pieces she has come across in her over 25 years of selling antiques here in Salem. Hi, I'm Dean Johnson, Editor-in-Chief of Follow South Jersey. Welcome to the Follow Salem podcast. Today we have with us Cheryl Earhart. How you doing, Cheryl?
I'm doing well.
Great.
Thank
Cheryl
you.
is the owner of Market Street Treasures right on Market Street here in Salem. So thanks for being out with us.
You're welcome.
So give us a little background, Cheryl. Where'd you grow up?
Well, I grew up in Burlington, New Jersey, which of course is considered the sister city of Salem. Attended Burlington High School. Shortly after leaving high school or graduating from high school, my family moved to Marlton, New Jersey. And that's where I started my career in banking initially.
Okay.
I was going to say I've done banking, real estate. I worked for a liquor store and lounge business. A good friend of mine opened a liquor store and lounge business, and I ended up managing that for him.
Right.
So I've been in kind of the business world,
financial,
all my life.
What attracted you to that kind of business? That kind of a career.
Well, I've always been basically, I don't know, financial oriented.
Okay.
I mean, numbers have always been a big thing with me.
I was more a word person than numbers person. Right?
Yeah, well, for some reason, I've always gravitated towards business.
Right.
And I seem to have a knack for ending up like either running a business or doing the accounting for a business.
Right.
And so it all just seems natural.
Right. Did you get certifications, or did you go do?
No, just strictly in, way back when I graduated in 1965.
Okay.
So it's been a while.
Okay.
And back then you either went to college or you went
right
out into the business world, one or the other.
Right.
And for me, I'm the oldest of four, so college wasn't in the plans.
Right.
And so, like I said, I went to work for the local bank, and because of the banking background, that's what I seem to lead towards.
And you picked up all the skills, all the financial skills, things like that people would have picked up in college, but you picked them up in real life.
Yes. I experienced it instead of going to college. And in some ways, I kind of think that's good. Because I was on the job learning, so things that going to college you aren't exposed to, you are when you're out there in the real world.
Theoretical versus practical.
Yep.
You're learning practical, so you're
absolutely
right. So what brought you to own a business here in Salem?
Well, actually, I married my husband in 1985.
Okay.
He is a Salem boy. He was born and raised here. His name was Paul Earhart, which everybody knew Earhart's Auto Parts, which is what the building that the antique store is in.
I was going to ask you about the building. Let's talk about this first, and we'll get to the building.
Yeah. So his father purchased the property. Now, his family has been here since the 1850s, and they've always been business people. In fact, the original property that they owned was called the Rumsey Building, and it's now the senior apartments. The city had approached his father about selling the property to them so they could build the apartments, and that's why they ended up buying the property down on Market Street.
When was that? Do you know what year?
It was 1958 when his father bought the building. And the building itself is kind of unique in the fact that when he bought it, it was actually considered a coal company, and there were 4 gigantic silos actually out front, where they faced Market Street.
Oh, wow.
But after he bought the building, since they were in business, which I'll kind of get back to, but anyway, they removed the silos.
Right.
And he came in and he did the state-of-the-art building back then. And a lot of companies here in Salem were involved in it, but the building is actually, it's a cinder block building, but it has a cement reinforced ceilings or girders that create the ceiling, which means that the building is totally freestanding. There's no like bearing walls that you have to worry about.
Oh, wow.
You can configure the front. Now this is the front part of the building.
Right.
But the back part of the building, which is the original building, that we know is probably mid to late 1800s.
Wow.
Possibly, but we think 1800s because the little bit that we know about it, there were businesses in it. So you have the old and the new. And so
relatively new.
Well,
at this point.
At that time,
Right.
it was new.
Yeah.
Now it isn't new, but the concepts have come back. When you think about it, the floors are all, the heating is in the floors. Well, we got away from radiate heating,
Right.
but it's coming back again.
Is it still usable?
Oh yeah, that's how you heat the front of the store.
Wow.
It's oil generated,
Right.
and then the back is fans that are run by hot water.
Right.
So just coming into the building is interesting when you look at all the main pillars and the way that they're put together in the back section. It shows you what kind of craftsmanship was generated to create this. To me, it's amazing because, I mean, these are huge pillars that hold from the basement up to there is a third floor.
Okay.
We don't use it. Because number one, the steps are very narrow and very steep, and we'd be afraid to have people going up and down.
Right.
But also because it only has the entrance from inside the building, it can't be used as a retail.
Right.
You would have to have an outside stairway in order to be able to use it for retail. Right. So. But like I said, at the time that they were building it, it was a big deal because of the fact that nobody else had anything like it here in town.
Yeah, that's interesting. You'd think there'd be more attention to something that's so unique in building.
Yeah, you would think, except I guess there weren't a whole lot of properties empty or available to be built on, and by the time they did, it was sort of like another decade, so everything was different. Even by like the 60s, everything was different in the way that they approached building things. So
the building was, you said auto parts.
Yes, when initially the Earhart business was more like a retail type store. It's amazing that from what I understand, one section of the store, it was sort of like a mercantile type business, but one section actually housed the Victrolas, and at any given time there would be anywhere from 40 to 50 Victrolas in there, along with approximately 1,500 records. I mean, that blows my mind to think that back in those days you would have that type of business. They sold guns, They sold a little bit of everything.
And what years were we talking about this now?
This was prior to 1958. That
Okay.
was when the business was up here in town.
Okay.
His great-grandfather is the one who actually started the original business here in Salem.
Right. What was the name of the business?
That I'm not sure of.
Okay.
I don't.
Did it have the family name
the
attached?
The family name was always attached to
Okay.
it. But his great-grandfather was what was known as a German journeyman, which meant that he had apprenticed in a number of different types of vocations, and he used that when he came over here, because he came over here as a young man on his own. And so in order to basically earn a living, and a lot of times journeymen would trade living with people by doing work for them. And I know he was a carpenter, he was a blacksmith, he repaired locks, so he had a very varied
Jack of all trades type
yes,
of thing.
Yes, and that in turn is how he started his business here in Salem.
Okay.
After a few years.
All right.
So as I said, the Earhart name has always been in business.
Right.
And then I guess when my husband here is not known as Paul, he's known as Bucky.
Okay.
So anybody who knows Earhart knows Bucky.
Okay.
And his grandfather had trained more, had actually gone out to, I believe it was Kansas. He had a brother out there, and that's where he learned more of the mercantile type business. So when he took the business over from his father, it kind of revolved into not so much a journeyman type business as to more of a retail type business. And then his father, and part of that was in, I guess, the 40s. His father was involved in the business, and he got involved he was the first tire distributor in the South Jersey area.
Wow.
And the tires in those days were guaranteed for 3,000 miles. But he had the dealership on them. Mm-hmm. And so when they sold the property here, his father made the decision that he saw the automotive industry as becoming the up-and-coming industry.
That's great foresight.
So he once again changed the focus of the business, and most everybody from town always knew it as Earhart's Auto Parts.
Okay.
And they supplied the parts, but they also supplied all the local garages that did the repairs. Mm-hmm. And, they had, oh gosh, probably at any given time, they probably had about 15 people in the shop because they would deliver if somebody needed parts.
Right.
So, that's what started. And so that's what I kind of married into, was the auto parts business.
So when did the auto parts stop having business?
We closed the auto parts business in the early 1990s, because around that time is when your big jobber, what they call jobber people, industry came in. Mm-hmm. So instead of going to your local auto parts people to get your parts, you could go directly to the manufacturers and cut out the middleman.
Right.
Now, my husband had the foresight that he branched off into the automotive wholesale business. So that the back building where the printers are was actually the auto parts distributor, and that went by South Jersey Warehouse. Why it went by South Jersey? Well, I guess they didn't want to put the Earhart name once again, so he went by South Jersey Warehouse. And so he was a warehouse distributor where the front store was the auto parts stores. So
that would sound like they were almost in competition with each other.
No, because when my husband owned the business, the warehouse distributors were not allowed to sell to the individual garages and car dealerships. You had to go to an auto parts store to be able to get your parts. But like I said, probably in around the mid to late 80s, that all changed. And since my husband had his own business, and he had a general manager that ran the auto parts business, he decided, since he saw kind of the writing on the wall, that we decided to close the auto parts business.
All right.
In around probably around 94 or 95, we actually closed the business. So the building sat empty for almost 5 years. But then my husband was given an early retirement in 2000. And at that point, both of us had worked full time. And so at that point we said, whoa, wait a minute, he's retired. This building has to do something. It can't sit empty anymore. And that's how Market Street Treasures came about, which was interesting because one of the neighbors across the street, Donna Robinson, had an Irish shop that she ran out of her home. And when my husband was over here working on the building, she came over they knew each other, and she came over and she wanted to know what he was going to do with the building. And he said, I have no idea. I have to fix it up first. And, so she wanted to be able to move the Irish shop over to the building, but just the front part of the building. But that's 60 by 80. That's a big space, and it was way too big just for her shop. So she made a deal with them that if she could get enough antique vendors in the property to fill the front store up, would we consider opening the store as
so it's just an opportunity that just happened to come. It was not forced. You weren't thinking, hey, let's open it. That's interesting.
And of course, my husband was a salesman at heart, and it's a shame he's not here because he's the storyteller. I mean, he could entertain you for hours with stories, but we lost him almost 3 years ago. So, but so we opened the doors in October of 2000, and so we've been there a little over 24 years. Wow. It has changed a lot, from when we opened it. But 20 years ago, we opened the doors as an antiques and collectible.
How many vendors did you start off with?
We probably started off with, I'm going to guess, besides the Irish shop, there were probably about 10 vendors in there. And it was funny because that was the front section, and he wasn't in any hurry to do things in the back section. But the vendors all know each other, and when they found out that we had opened this building to allow them to come in and set up permanently, and we did all the selling for them, they got on his case about they had more people that were interested, so he had to kind of speed up the renovations to the
Right.
back end of the building
Okay.
so that we could bring in more vendors.
And how many do you have now?
I have between 28 and 30 vendors, and I have about 38 individual spaces
Okay.
in the building,
Right.
because we also extended 4 spaces down into the basement.
Right.
They're what I call my hodgepodge spaces, because you're limited as to what you can have down there. You can't put like good furniture or anything like that down there because it's damp. It's
Right.
a basement. But there's 4 spaces down there, and antiquers are, they love the hunt.
Yeah.
And believe me, the downstairs is a good place for the hunt, because you never know what you're going to find down there. There's all kinds of goodies, old stuff, old tools, just some things I have no idea what some
they
of
are.
the things are. I'll tell you, the Google Lens has helped me a lot, because
great.
if somebody brings something up, and we're old school, we write up everything by hand.
Yeah.
Well, the vendors are supposed to have descriptions on things so that, one, I know what I'm selling and
Right.
I can check it against the item. But sometimes they don't, and I'll say to the customer, "Do you have any idea what this is?" And sometimes they do, and sometimes they don't.
Why would they buy something they don't know what it is?
It just
Looks-
attracts their
Right.
attention,
Right.
and then they'll start researching it, and they like the idea of
unique-
having something old
Right.
and not know what it is, and then do the research on
Right.
it. Most of my vendors are local, either Salem, Pennsville, Bridgeton, Millville. I have one vendor who comes from Pennsylvania, from the media area of Pennsylvania. And I have one vendor who comes from the Newark, Delaware area, and then I have a third vendor who's in Fortescue.
Okay.
So, but most of the vendors are local,
Right.
and so you'll find a fair amount of local items in the store, but that's getting harder and harder to find.
Yeah.
Because people are really into collecting local
history.
memorabilia, so it doesn't stay in. And with the advent of online auctions,
Right.
it's getting harder and harder.
Do you do online?
No. The only online I do is Facebook.
Right.
I try to post pieces that attract my attention. I
Right.
try to put it online.
But people have to come in and
Oh,
still
yes,
get it.
yes.
You're not doing that online.
And really, antiquers they will buy online, but they like to be able to pick it up
Right.
and feel it and look at it,
Right.
and also really see what the condition is.
Right.
You can't do that online.
Right.
I mean, people can take pictures, but it doesn't necessarily show you truly what the item looks like.
Right.
So
So you said you opened it in 2000. So you've been working with antiques for nearly 25 years. Have you seen changes in the trends of what type of antiques people are looking for, the type of people coming through your door?
Well, what's interesting is back in 2000, when we opened the doors, furniture was primary in the antiques business. I mean, and we had the variety. I mean, we went from Victorian into what is called primitive, farmhouse, but really the true antiques were the bigger sellers in the store. But over the years, and collectibles were there more as like fill-ins,
Can you differentiate what you
glassware.
mean by collectibles versus antiques?
Okay, collectibles are basically smaller items. It would be figurines, and it would be glassware,
Right,
and a lot of carnival wear, and a lot of depression wear. And even just their collectibles are more things that people collected as opposed to using them on a day-to-day basis.
Okay.
But, but today, I mean, Pyrex bowls and dishes are big.
Mid-century.
Corningware. And furniture-wise, now what we consider the true antiques, which being in the historic area of Salem, we have a call for true antiques. But today, most people are looking more for mid-century modern. They all love primitive. I mean, primitive pieces, and that's...
Now, what is that? What is that?
Primitive is kind of, they were basically handmade, and usually they have about 14 coats of paint on them. They're very simple.
Okay.
But Farmhouse has now also... you have your what are called jelly cupboards, which are the wood cupboards, and they're still...
Is that like shabby chic?
Yeah,
absolutely. It looks very used, but yet it's cool.
Yes,
all right.
Yes, but and it's more. I mean, it's a better grade of like furniture. And tables, and so, but the industry, I mean, really, furniture-wise, we're limited as to, most of my vendors are more collectible vendors. They'll get pieces. You'll get bureaus and tables and nightstands or side tables, but for the most part, most of what we sell now are what would be considered collectibles, and big on holiday decorations. That has become the old holiday decorations.
What attracts people to this? Do you think it's a sense of nostalgia for their own childhoods?
I think so. I think a lot of what they buy, because if you listen to them, either they grew up with it or they had it, they remember it from their grandparents.
Right. And
so I really think that that's why, even I can remember growing up, we had the enamel top table. And then we went to sort of like the Formica top table.
Right.
And these are things now that sell, and I think it is. It's because, this is what you grew up with, and now you look at it and you think, wow, that's kind of neat. It's different than what is being sold today.
Right.
And it also brings back a lot of childhood memories.
Right, comfort.
And even the childhood games. They're big.
Like board games.
Yep, board games. All of a sudden, marbles are becoming big again. I'm not sure why, but all of a sudden, marbles.
How can you tell an antique marble from a new marble?
Don't ask me, but my vendors know that there's ways. It's the material they're made out of, and the looks of them.
Okay.
So my vendors can tell you, oh well, this was probably such and such a year, and so it's amazing. And that's one thing I don't know. I'm not a vendor. I've never been a vendor.
Right.
But the vendors are very knowledgeable. Yeah. Most of them, for the most part, started as kids, with going around with their mother, and generally the mothers.
Right.
And so this has been I call it a passion. They call it an obsession. I say passion.
It's a thin line between the two.
Passion sounds better, So, and like I said, the big thing with antiquers is the hunt. Yeah. They love having to kind of go through piles and all that kind of stuff. But I do try to make sure that the vendors keep some sort of order within their spaces, because I do have to worry about nobody getting hurt moving things around. But so it's been an interesting journey. It really has.
Well, tell us about some of the pieces. Like, have you ever experienced, we were talking before, something that was there that suddenly you realized was extremely valuable? Or even vice versa, something that somebody thought was very valuable, then finding out, well, it's really not that at all.
I was going to say, I can't say that we've ever had that fortune to find, although I will say, we were talking about Pyrex, and I had a customer, this has only been maybe 3 years ago. And in the Pyrex patterns, there's one I call it the farmer design. I don't know whether that's the true name, but it's like a male and a female, in farmer type garb. And most of them are white with either blue or like an aqua color, or blue with the white.
Right.
So I had a lady come up, and she was all excited about this one little bowl. And, she said, "Oh, I've been looking for this bowl for forever." And I'm thinking, okay, no problem. And so she bought it. Now, after she bought it, she explained to me why she was so excited. They did one, I don't know what, run, I guess is what you would call it, where they reversed, and the female was first and the male was on the right-hand side, and they are very valuable.
Wow.
But I would never have known if she hadn't told me. So now, every time somebody brings in the blue and the white, I always check
which side
more for the vendors. But I didn't know. But so that was one, and it was was fairly valuable, and she got it for the price of a normal Pyrex dish. So. That was interesting.
Maybe that's part of the hunt for the antiquers. They're looking for that special.
Absolutely. And the people kind of specialize in what they're looking for, and they're very knowledgeable. But the one thing, as I said before, Google Lens now, that they're all in there with their phones, taking pictures and checking on Google Lens to see whether or not the prices are reasonable. And our vendors are. I mean, that's one of the reasons people come to South Jersey. I have people that come from Virginia, Ohio, New York. Oh, New York loves to come down here. North Jersey loves to come down here because our prices, even at the auctions, our prices are so much lower. And their clientele will pay top dollar for it. So
they can buy it here and then resell it up there.
Absolutely.
So do you, are you like a consignment, or do you just rent out the spaces?
It's strictly, I rent out the space to the individual vendor.
Gotcha.
The vendor creates the space, they price it. If there's any discounts, they let me know what the discounts are. But I have nothing to do with the merchandise or the pricing. It's strictly, I do what the vendors tell me to do. It's kind of a reverse role, I'm the owner, but they tell me what I do.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, but you were asking about pieces. We had a full-size Elvis.
I mean, you say full size.
Full size.
Full human size.
Full human size, 6 foot, whatever. And we had him for probably about 3 years before he sold. And we kept him at the front door. And I can't tell you how many times I'd walk up to the front door and step back because I thought somebody was in the building. But, and then the other thing is, I used to say, I could make a small fortune because everybody that came in wanted to take a picture with Elvis. And I said, gosh, if I had charged to have you take a picture,
right?
boy, I could be on Easy Street.
That's
but
funny.
Elvis did sell. Actually, he sold probably about 10 years ago. He now resides in Maryland. And the fella who bought him comes in at least twice a year, and I always ask him how Elvis is doing.
Right. And he bought it for his home, or?
Yes. His basement, I guess, is kind of fixed up as a
homage to Elvis, or
a man cage or
right?
whatever, and so that's where Elvis is. He's down in the basement, but like I said, for 3 years we moved him around a little bit because, like I said, he
was it was it 50s Elvis, or was it like Vegas Elvis?
It was a younger Elvis, so I'm going to say more
like more rock and roll Elvis than the glittery Las Vegas.
He wasn't glittery. He was. I believe, if I remember correctly, he was in like a black outfit.
Yeah,
and,
the black leather.
So, and then the other thing that we sold, which it was evidently a gear out of a big warehouse. I mean, it was almost 6 foot tall.
Okay.
And again, it sat in there because I kept saying, what? It looked like a wheel at first.
Like a wheel gear with a little things in it. Okay.
And I kept saying, who on earth is going to buy this? And it was in the store that was one of my basement hodgepodge.
Okay.
And a young couple came in. Now, again, it's probably been about 10 years ago, but a young couple came in, and he was being transferred out to Montana with his job. And they had come in, they had seen the wheel, or it's actually a gear.
Right.
And they came back about a week later, and they said, do you think the vendor would deal a little bit? And we said, sure. Well, they were taking it out. It was going to become the light fixture in their main living room. Wow. They were going to have it electrified and made into a light fixture. And I went, and you're going to, because it wasn't light by any means. In fact, we had to take it out the side door from the basement because we couldn't get it up the steps.
Okay.
And, but, they put it in a U-Haul and took it out to Montana.
Did you ever get pictures of it?
No,
that'd be fun.
I know.
But it's neat. Like, how many people are looking for things to repurpose like that?
A lot of people today, when they buy things, it's not to use, it's because they're going to repurpose it. Even the furniture, a lot of times, they're going to repurpose the furniture into something else. I had a lady come in a couple weeks ago, and we had big metal brackets, beautiful metal. They're all scrolled and all of that. Well, that was going outside because she was putting in flower boxes on the front of her house, and she wanted those metal brackets so that it would give it a more ornate look to it. Okay. So, if I know they're doing something different with it, I usually will say to them, could you do me a favor and take a picture of it when you're all done and send it to me so that I can show the vendor what you did with the item. And not all of them, but a fair amount of them will send me the thing. So like I said, it's been very interesting.
Yeah, it sounds interesting, and you constantly have new stuff coming in.
Oh, absolutely.
Like, how often is everything kind of like you have all kinds of brand new items in there, as opposed to things sitting there?
All depends. I have vendors that are in there. Well, I have vendors who live across the street they're in there every day, just about, and they're bringing
Is the
things.
Irish store still there?
No,
Okay.
no, the Irish store, unfortunately, Donna has passed, and the Irish store was long gone. But most of I have probably at least 6 vendors, possibly more, that are in there every single week, at least once a week, and changing things around or bringing more stuff in. For the most part, on a monthly basis.
Okay.
Most of my vendors come in on a monthly basis.
Right.
And they do, because their spaces are limited, they do change according to seasons.
Right.
Like right now you're doing spring and summer, and you're taking out the winter type objects,
right,
and bringing in spring and summer.
Okay.
And then your holidays, they always have a lot of decorations or, blow molds. I don't know whether you know what those are, but they were the figures that in our childhood days sat out on the front lawn. They're plastic.
Okay.
And
yes. You would put light up in them,
yes,
and like a Santa Claus or
yes,
or a nativity scene, that kind of stuff.
Well, right now I guess I have 2 bunny rabbits, and because it's coming up on Easter,
Right.
so for the holidays you'll find blow molds coming in for
Okay.
the different holidays.
Right.
But yes, you'll find most of my vendors change according to what's going on, sort of like on a 3-month basis.
Right.
And then, come May, then they'll start thinking about, Memorial Day and then Mother's Day, Father's Day,
Right.
4th of July. So summertime, it changes a little more frequently because there's more events that, they gear to. And
Right.
then the big time is from September to December. That's when you do your biggest business,
Okay.
is during the holiday
Right.
months.
Gifts, decorations.
Yes.
Right. So, we kind of touched upon, what people are interested in, but a general interest in antiques. Have you seen any trends over the past 25 years? Are people less interested in them now? Are they becoming more interested in them?
Unfortunately, I'm going to say, like, my daughter's generation, they've really kind of, they're not into the antiques the way, that's your grandparents' type furniture.
Right.
And we are sort of a throwaway nation now. Nobody wants to keep anything for 30, 40 years. We like changing things around constantly.
Right.
So yes, there's probably less interest, and most of my customers who are purchasing, all say to me, well, when I'm gone, they'll just put all this out into a yard sale and sell it in a yard sale, which
Right.
is a shame. But the bright spot is that my grandson's generation seems to be moving more towards appreciating, the older, like, not so much furniture, but more like for the boys, it's
Right.
more like the tools and any equipment that they use.
Right.
And the other thing that's starting to turn around with the younger generation are records.
Yeah, vinyl is
LPs
back.
and 45s.
Right.
I mean, they come in constantly looking. Of course, they like to find the old record players also.
Right.
That's a little harder to
Yeah.
find. because well, half of them probably have been thrown away long ago, but they're out there.
Yeah.
I mean, you can find them, and there are people out there that, buy them up and restore them and then sell them. So they kind of like the idea of listening to the records on the original equipment as opposed to the digitized equipment, because it's a whole different sound.
It is a whole different sound. It's an activity in itself. Mm-hmm. What are you doing? I'm listening to the records as opposed to just ambient digital music.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
So
what has been the most challenges that you've had to overcome with your business in Salem, just in business in general? What challenges do you see, and what challenges do you see for businesses in Salem, and how do you see the future for businesses in Salem?
Well, I'm going to say probably the biggest challenge is the conception of the city of Salem, which is a shame, because the city does. It has so much to offer. But unfortunately, it also has a very downside to it. It does have sort of a tired look to it. Mm-hmm. I know that we're trying very hard to change that. But as I tell everybody, this didn't happen overnight, and you can't fix it overnight. For the business person, it's very expensive to own a property here. I mean, if I went into Quinton or if I went into Mannington, my expenses would be maybe a third of what it is. And that, unfortunately, isn't changing. So like I said, it's very expensive to own a property in Salem.
So what's the future of Market Street Treasures? Do you see expansion? Do you see where's it going? And
right
what's the
now,
future?
I mean, I'm tired. I'm not a young spring chicken. My hope is I love Market Street Treasures. I love the people. I love the customers. But I think it needs a newer generation who can bring it up into the 21st century. Right. And I think that's where the future is going to be for the antique store. The people who own it need to be able to use the internet and be able to feature and promote that way. I don't have that ability. I'm just not of that generation, and unfortunately, as I said, my husband was a second marriage. His daughter is out in California, his son's in Arizona, and even my grandsons, they have no interest in taking over the business. So my hope is down the road somewhere that somebody, well, I shouldn't say down the road. I have a few people that are interested in possibly, purchasing, but nothing, nothing is in the works at this point. Okay. But that's what it needs. It needs a younger generation to come in and maybe upgrade, like not have the antiques and the collectibles, but maybe you need to add something to it to entice the younger generation to come in. So that's my hope, because I believe in it. I think it's a great business, but it does, for us, for Market Street Treasures, it definitely needs a younger generation to come in and carry it to the next step.
Right.
Because I don't have that ability.
Yeah. And hopefully that'll be there.
That's what I'm hoping.
Cheryl, thank you so much for
You're
being
welcome.
with us today. I had a wonderful conversation. We were talking with Cheryl Earhart, owner of Market Street Treasures. Dean Johnson, editor of Follow South Jersey for the Follow Salem podcast. Thanks for watching.